climate changes. It is a fact that Earth's climate changes throughout history. There have been 7 cycles of glacial advance and retreat. The sudden end of the last ice age, about 7,000 years ago, began the modern climate era and the human civilization. Most of the changes in our climate were caused by very small variations in Earth's orbit, which influence on the amount of solar energy that our planet receives. While studying the causes of climate changes, scientists suspect gases, but also solar radiation. It's obvious that the sun can be responsible for them because it is a fundamental source of energy which drives our climate system. The studies show that solar variability is responsible for some changes in our climate in the past. For example, a decrease in solar activity caused the Little Ice Age from 1650 till 1850. Although the solar irradiance was responsible for the changes in the past, several evidences show that the current global warming can't be explained by it. Since 1750, the amount of energy which coming from the sun remained constant or increased slowly. The warmer temperatures don't appear in all layers of the atmosphere. Climate models that include solar irradiance changes cannot explain the observed temperature trend over the last century. Global warming. Most scientists agree that current global warming is caused by greenhouse gases expanded by humans. This warming results when the atmosphere traps radiating from Earth towards space. Greenhouse gases block heat from escaping. They remain semi-permanently in the atmosphere and don't respond physically or chemically to changes in temperature. However, greenhouse effect is natural for our planet. Without it, there would be no life on Earth. The average temperature would amount to -18 Celsius degrees. The problem is unnaturally enhanced by humans' greenhouse effect. Greenhouse gases. Water vapor, the most abundant greenhouse gas, but importantly, it acts as a feedback to the climate. Water vapor increases as the Earth's atmosphere warms, but so does the possibility of clouds and precipitation, making these some of the most important feedback mechanisms to the greenhouse effect. Carbon dioxide. It's a very important component of the atmosphere, released through natural processes such as respiration and volcano eruptions, and through humans' activities such as deforestation, land use changes, and burning fossil fuels. It's the most important long-lived forcing of climate. The amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has been increased with the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Methane. It's produced by natural sources and human activity, including decompositions of waters in landfills, agriculture, and rice cultivation. Methane is far more active, over 20 times, than carbon dioxide, but because it's much less abundant, it isn't as important cause of global warming as carbon dioxide. Nitrous oxide. It's produced by soil cultivation practices, the use of commercial and organic fertilizers, fossil fuel combustion, and biomass burning.
The Amazon rainforest is an equatorial region encompassing 6 million square kilometers located in the northern part of South America, covering the Amazon River basin. The territory of Amazonia stretches from the Andes in the west to the Atlantic Ocean in the east and is occupied by rapidly developing countries, Brasilia, Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, Venezuela, Guyana, Suriname, and French Guiana. The Amazon rainforest climate is defined as humid with consistently high temperatures and seasonal rainfall. Due to its specific environment, the forest contains millions of unique species, some of which are still unknown. According to WWF organization data, currently over 40,000 species of plants have been discovered, but scientists maintain that there are much more yet undiscovered species. What's more, researchers from Field Museum, Chicago, Illinois, estimate that over 16,000 different species of trees grow in this region, from which 6,000 species of the population of fewer than 1,000 specimens. Also, the fauna of Amazonia is diversified. As stated in WWF Bulletin, in the Amazon River live over 3,000 species of freshwater fish. The majority of Amazonia's inhabitants are indigenous people who represent 350 ethnic groups, of which some are still living in isolation, but since the countries occupying the forest started interfering in the traditional lifestyle, some areas have undergone the process of urbanization. There is a clear link between the Amazon rainforest and global climate stability. It comes as no surprise that during aerobic respiration, organisms release carbon dioxide, which during photosynthesis is converted into the oxygen. This is of course an oversimplification, but this presentation doesn't provide me with sufficient scope for a more thorough explanation of the chemical process involved. According to the WWF organization data, the Amazon contains half of the Earth's remaining dense tropical forest total area, thus the region is called the lungs of the Earth. What's more, the canopy of the Amazon rainforest takes part in worldwide water cycle due to its high humidity and rainfalls. Average amount of downfalls in Amazonia amount to 2,100 mm. The average temperature around 30 Celsius degrees triggers intensive plant transpiration and high water evaporation to the atmosphere. Unfortunately, these processes and cycles are disrupted by deforestation of Amazonia. Due to the rapid development of countries like Brazil or Colombia, vast areas of the Amazon rainforest are illegally cut down to provide place for cornfields and cattle pastures. Another reason for logging is the value of Amazon's endemic species timber. Further deforestation is also caused by intensive usage of deforested fields that surround remaining forested area. Extensive agricultural expansion and cattle ranching cause the soil's erosion by overcropping and overgrazing, and in addition, the WWF reports that the deforestation caused by ranching also contributes to climate change, releasing 340 million tons of carbon into the atmosphere every year. Another example of excessive exploitation hurting the forest's fragile ecosystem is the mining of natural resources like gold or oil. Mining activities contribute to water and air pollution with heavy metals. For instance, mercury is used to separate gold from sludge. It is estimated that between 1987 and 1994, over 3,000 tons of pure mercury has been released into the Brazilian Amazon. One of the catastrophic consequences of this activity is the concentration of heavy metal in fish of Amazon River. Another fatal result is the rainforest dieback, which is also a consequence of further deforestation. As the greenery dies, it releases the carbon, which badly affects the global warming. The predicted amount of carbon in the Amazon rainforest oscillates between 90 and 140 billion metric tons. The carbon contained in the plant due to combustion can be released in the air in the form of carbon dioxide. In past few years, the fires began to occur more frequently in the Amazon rainforest. Scientists suppose that they are caused by global and local climate change and deforestation and its consequences. The great droughts in 2005 and 2010 can also be attributed to the local climate change.
One of the best examples of global warming on Earth is one of the seventh continents, Antarctica. It is a polar region situated around South Pole. Its area is about 14 million square kilometers, so it's the fifth largest continent. This inhospitable land of Antarctica belongs to no country and it is dedicated mainly to scientific researches, and it's called the International Region. The weather in Antarctica can be highly variable, and the weather conditions can often change dramatically in short periods of time. About 90% of the Antarctica is thick continental ice sheet, and the other 2% is barren rock. It is called the desert of ice swept by powerful winds. With average of temperature less than -57°C in the center, this dry and very windy continent is the coolest place in the world. The coast is a little bit warmer. The lowest recorded temperature of any location on Earth's surface was in Antarctica in 2010, and it was equal to -93.2°C. There are some species that are well adjusted to live in such adverse conditions, for example penguins, who are flocking together to withstand the freezing temperatures. The numbers of birds and marine mammals of this region depend on the resources of the Southern Ocean in order to survive. The continent of Antarctica itself has been too cold and dry to support virtually any vascular plants. The chilling temperature, lack of sunlight, little amount of rain, inferior soil quality due to the inability of the plants to absorb water. Its extant flora presently consists of around 250 lichens, 100 mosses, and around 700 algal species.
The West Antarctic Peninsula is one of the fastest warming areas on Earth. Researchers say that the temperature there increased by around 3°C in the last 50 years, so about 10 times faster than in the rest of the world. What's more, the other 96% of regions' temperature of this spectacular continent are not likely to rise, since over the last 40 years the temperature is stable compared to the other parts of the world. The changes of temperature on this continent are not a surprise. In last 65 years it had risen from about -5°C to around -2°C in 2010, so the change is equal to 3°C in 60 years. That means that in every 20 years the temperature is rising by 1°C. The cause of these changes is global warming. Although the ice core temperature's ups and downs were regular for over 400,000 years in Antarctic, the temperature was rising even to about 3°C, but it was also dipping to around -10°C. The temperature was rising while the CO2 concentration was rising too. Antarctic's ice shelves are breaking away, for example the famous breakaway of Larsen B ice shelf in 2002. If the ice is melting, the sea level is rising. That means some regions can disappear under the water by some time if the temperature in Antarctica would not stop rising. Since the 1950s, this is a loss of 25,000 square kilometers of ice shelf. British Antarctic Survey research has shown also that the near-surface sea temperatures to the west of peninsula have risen by over 1°C in 60 years. The fauna is at risk too. For example, the emperor penguins colony in some region could decline by 95% before the end of this century if sea ice continues to decline as fast as now. The polar region is warming and losing ice. Now we need to take actions to reduce the human influence on climate.
Climate change will also affect all of the living organisms. The most important part of climate, temperature and precipitation is changing, so environments will change. To avoid an extinction of the species, organisms will have to change their ecological niches, migrate to other places or adapt to new conditions on the way of evolution. But here is the problem. Evolution needs thousands of years to get some effects, and the climate change now goes faster than it was going ever before. According to scientists from Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, for 2050 up to 30% of species would be at increased risk of extinction. Kingdom of living organisms that's the most susceptible on climate warming is kingdom of fungi. Those organisms live in environments with high humidity. Fungi need water in the process of absorbing organic compounds. They release enzymes into their surroundings to break down complex materials into simpler ones that can be absorbed by the fungus. For these enzymes to function, water is necessary. That's why fungi won't be able to survive in dry environments, so global warming will have negative influence on population of fungi. And it's not just about those organisms. Fungi are important components of nature because together with bacteria, they are decomposers responsible for recycling, which returns this matter to a form in which it can be reused. And this could cause an interrupt in matter cycle. Besides, an important function of fungi is symbiosis with trees called mycorrhiza. Without fungi, which help trees in absorbing water, there would be no trees, what means no forests, and this fact can cause serious ecological catastrophe. From animals, most at risk are amphibians. Those animals are ectothermic and extremely sensitive on even small changes of the temperature, so the climate warming will have big influence on their functioning. And amphibians are psychologically specialized to good wet habitats. Because of the climate change, most of the environments will become warmer and with lower humidity. Some small water sources will dry out. We can think that disappearance of some small ponds won't make so big difference, but amphibians need dual environments to survive. Water supplies affect fertilization and growth of tadpoles, so if the climate on the Earth will become drier, the population of amphibians will reduce. All of this mentioned before is not just speculations. We already can see this tendency. Population extinction of yellow-legged frog that lives in North America ranted from 91 to 98%. In Australia, 2 species of gastric-dwelling frogs have disappeared. Over 200 species of salamanders went extinct because of an infectious disease caused probably by climate change. Those are only singular examples. The number of amphibians is getting lower every year, and global warming can be an important cause of this. And how climate change will affect us? If we want it or not, humans are also part of the nature, so we will feel all the changes that happen on the Earth. As any other animals, we will need food to survive, and still the most important source of organic compounds for humans are plants. Because of the rising temperature, time of vegetation will be longer, but repeated droughts can eventually make crops really low. Low crops will cause terrible famine that will kill thousands of people in poor countries in Africa, South America or Asia, and in developed countries this can be a cause of economical crisis. But food shortage is not the only one problem. Because of the climate warming, winters will be warmer, and the period of time when the temperatures are below 0 degrees Celsius is really important. Frost kills some microorganisms that cause diseases. If after every summer lots of microorganisms dies during winter, what will happen if they survive and reproduce and will begin the next summer with much higher number of germs? This could be the reason of higher number of infected people. Besides, in Europe will appear illnesses like malaria, which normally appear in hot regions, and people will have to learn how to fight with them. But there are also some advantages of climate change. How much people will die because of frost every year? For them, climate warming is a chance to survive. Besides, according to some scientists, in the warmer temperature, viruses could become softer and less resistant, so it will be probably less people infected by viruses. In the case of living organisms, climate change is not just about warming, it's about the change itself. Environments in which some species lived for years won't be the same anymore, and organisms will have to adapt. All of them will have to migrate or change themselves in order to survive in new conditions. Plants and animals will go to higher latitudes or to the higher places on the mountainside. And the whole fauna and flora on the Earth will have to learn how to live in this new changed world.
Our civilization is so developed that we have at our disposal science and technologies which allow us to significantly decrease emission of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. There are 2 major ways to do that. Firstly, is to continue developing methods we use to produce more energy. Secondly, introducing on a grand scale capture and sequestration of carbon dioxide. There are 2 methods to increase effectiveness of producing energy. First one is to replace fossil fuels with gas fuels or oil fuels, and also to build more facilities where renewable resources may be used. Second one is to implement technologies increasing efficiency of power and heating plants. Improving present methods of producing energy meet with the general approval. Nowadays, effectiveness of production, depending on source of energy, varies between 25 and 48%. As you can see, increasing effectiveness of all generators may save fuel, and as a result, it will reduce carbon dioxide emission. It can be done by those solutions. Extend number of power units working at supercritical parameters. They can reach effectiveness of 44 to 46%. Building new power units working at ultra supercritical parameters. Their effectiveness is equal to 55%. Applying integrated gas and steam systems, thanks to them effectiveness reaches 48% and it's easier to capture carbon dioxide later. Burning fuel in oxygen rather than in air. It can avoid capturing carbon dioxide from exhaust stream. On the graph you can notice that those solutions enable to reduce carbon dioxide emission by 30%. Next possible method to reduce amount of emitted carbon dioxide is capturing and sequestrating. It requires to master techniques of effective carbon dioxide capturing from the other exhausts. Nowadays, to do that, we use special membranes and adsorbents. Unfortunately, those devices are a bit old and they aren't effective enough. In addition, there is need to sequestrate it all the time, which isn't so easy. It's necessary to have a lot of space, such oil fields or unmanageable coal seams. Another thing is that capturing carbon dioxide is very energy consuming, so zero carbon dioxide emission causes energy loss. So you need to use more fossil fuel to produce the same amount of energy as present generators do. Currently, scientists work on 4 different ways to capture as much carbon dioxide as possible. Their use is different and is economic under good circumstances. That led companies in different parts of the world to find the best solution. Here are they. In post-combustion capture, the carbon dioxide is removed after combustion of the fossil fuel. This is the scheme that would be applied to fossil fuel burning power plants. Here, carbon dioxide is captured from flue gases at power stations or other large point sources. The technology is well understood and is currently used in other industrial applications. The technology for pre-combustion is widely applied in fertilizer, chemical, gaseous fuel, such as hydrogen or methane, and power production. In these cases, the fossil fuel is partially oxidized, for instance, in a gasifier. The resulting syngas, carbon monoxide and hydrogen, is shifted into carbon dioxide and hydrogen. The resulting carbon dioxide can be captured from a relatively pure exhaust stream. The hydrogen can be now used as a fuel. The carbon dioxide is removed before combustion takes place. In oxy-fuel combustion, the fuel is burned in oxygen instead of air. To limit the resulting flame temperatures to a level common during conventional combustion, cooled flue gas is recirculated and injected into a combustion chamber. The flue gas consists of mainly carbon dioxide and water vapor, the latter of which is condensed through cooling. The result is an almost pure carbon dioxide stream that can be transported to the sequestration site and stored. Power plants processed based on oxy-fuel combustion are sometimes referred to as zero-emission cycles because the carbon dioxide stored is not a fraction removed from the flue gas stream, as in the case of pre- and post-combustion capture, but the flue gas stream itself. All experts agree with one thing. Effectiveness improvement and carbon dioxide capturing will become in close future the best solution to reduce emission of greenhouse gas to the air. Most of these technologies are available, but companies still aren't interested in them. That's because of high costs connected with capturing carbon dioxide, which are higher than benefits. Next obstacle are some gaps in law relating to new technologies.